Carlos Nelson with Cascade Media Group, and tonight we're on our political channel, and we're lucky to have one of our young people running for office, second district at large here in Kansas City, Ms. Jenay Manley. Welcome to the show, Jenay.
Hi, Carlos. Thank you for having me on.
It's I'm gonna still watch. I usually steal his closing and say this. It was a plum pleasing pleasure having you on the show. But I'm gonna use that opening. It's a plum pleasing pleasure having you here, Jenay. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself. And as I say to most of my uh, guests, go back to kindergarten and talk about where you went to school, some of the mentors. I want to know about you, and I'm sure my audience wants to know about you. Floor is yours.
Yeah, so my name is Jenay Manley, and I'm running for Kansas City City Council in the 2nd District at large. I was born and raised in the Northland of Kansas City. I actually went to Park Hill Schools, Renner Elementary, for the first 7 years of my education. I bounced around a lot. So my grandma's house was my base house. It's where I went to school from. And my mom was a single mom. So we jumped from place to place. We went from apartment to apartment. We lived in a 1-bedroom cabin for a certain amount of time. And then we also lived on a campground when we were homeless for a summer. So we really bounced around a lot, but my grandma's house was my base house, and it's where I went to school from up until 7th grade. My mom got a union job with IBEW 124 and became an electrician, and it really changed our lives. After that, my mom was able to buy a house, and it stabilized our family. We moved to North Kansas City Schools, and it's where I graduated from. My mom's house was my house until she died when I was 19 years old, and I became a single mom at 21. And I struggled, right? I saw my mom struggle as a single mom, and I knew that having kids meant that I would struggle too. And for the first 5 years of my kids' life, I really did struggle to make the bills. I worked as a server at Applebee's, and then I worked at Quick Trip as an overnight assistant manager, but I still couldn't afford my bills. I moved my abuser back in with me. I donated plasma twice a week. It felt really impossible. In 2019, I joined KC Tenants, the citywide tenant union, and started fighting to ensure that my babies were able to have a roof over their heads and that I wouldn't have to choose between the rent and living with someone who made my life unsafe. And I started organizing my neighbors. So I really started building alongside the people in our community who were fighting to make sure that we could stay in our community, and it changed my life. As I was organizing, what I found was city council was where decisions were being made. So in the middle of the night while I was working on the overnight shift, I would put my headphones in and listen to committee hearings that happened the day before in order to figure out what policies were being created that would change my life for the better or the worse, right? And what I found was a lot of people were making decisions that would impact the lives of me and other single moms and other poor and working class people across the city without our analysis brought in. And organizing really changed that for me, right? It brought people together and really allowed us to amplify each other's voices and the solutions that we knew we needed, right? So that's what got me really engaged with city council. I became KC Tenants' city hall liaison. So I was organizing the meetings between KC Tenants leaders and city council members to make sure things like the Tenants Bill of Rights, the guaranteed right to counsel, all of these things were passed as policy. And as I started organizing and sharpening my analysis of how to move policy in City Hall, I realized that people like us can and should run for elected office. This wasn't in the plan for me at first. I planned on being a store manager at Quick Trip, trying to make it by. That was my goal. But as we continued to build power in the city, I realized that people like me should be a part of making decisions, right? We should be actively participating in the electoral process and not just voting, but actually helping craft the policy and ensuring that voices like ours were really a part of the conversation. And that's what made me decide to run for city council. It was a huge decision for me, but it honestly looked like the only decision that was possible for people like me to really share our vision and analysis and start pushing for policies that make sense for people who live in the city, who make Kansas City what it is, making sure that they get to stay and get to engage in a process that's bigger than just one person, but it actually builds for an entire Kansas City where all of us live in a stable city where we are not pushed out.
Boy, that's boy, that is a road that many have not traveled, but I would
Been a
tell you,
long one.
I've traveled that homeless, that whole deal. That's an ugly, ugly deal. To be positive and to climb out of all of that and see that information applied is power. That's
Yeah.
what I heard you say. I plugged in, I got information, I utilized the information that I got, and that puts me here where I understand the only way I can change these situations is by changing the law and changing the policies.
Yeah, and doing that alongside people, right? So it's not just about changing policy, it's inviting new people into the conversation. People who are impacted by policy should be asked, how does this policy work for you? Does it work? And if not, how do we change it so it can be better for the people who it's supposed to serve?
What is your platform that you're running on?
Yeah, so I'm running on a few things. The biggest thing is committing to people over profit. What that means is the people who live in our city should be actually well and happy living in our city, right? So for me, that's truly affordable housing, ensuring all of us have a home to live in. It's also making sure that we have robust public transportation that's reliable and it ensures people can get yes to work, also to their babysitter and to their places of leisure, right? Their community spaces. The other thing that I want to ensure is that poor and working class people actually have a livable wage in our city. What we see is a lot of us, especially single parents, having to give up work because we can't afford the rent and childcare and the daily bills to get to and from, right? So I think all of us deserve a livable wage. And those are the things that I want to fight for on city council. I want to make sure that parents don't have to work 2 and 3 jobs in order to make sure their kids get where they need to go in their future.
What generation are you?
I'm a millennial. I was born in 1992, so I'm 30. I've heard from a lot of people that I look young, but I am 30.
All right. How do you feel millennials are on understanding the system, especially here in Kansas City? And do you look for in the demographics uh, for millennials to support you?
Yeah, so I would say a lot of millennials know that the system as it is does not work for us, right? So in 2008, I was a sophomore in high school. That's when the housing market crashed, right? Then we came into a lot of student loan debt, and then we came into a city that ended up in COVID-19, where we had an economic crash again. So I think we know that, right? But I would also say that it's not just millennials that know that, right? The people that I organize with, some of them are in their 70s, some of them are 17, right? I think the bigger thing that at least the people that I organize alongside, what we know is that we actually have to build alongside one another in order to build something that works for us. The systems as they are today do not work in favor of the poor and working class people who are struggling. They work for the profiteers. They work for the people who continue to make money off of our struggle. And when we start coming together as a collective, we can really change that. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, hold it. I was getting ready to segue in, but you answered it. How well do you feel that you can build coalitions because you cannot do anything independent?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm really good at building coalitions, right? And I think I build coalitions because I ask really good questions. I ask people what their stake is. I ask them, just like you asked me to go back to kindergarten, I ask people to tell me their life stories and how things have benefited them and how they haven't, right? And then we start digging in about how things have benefited other people and how people have been harmed by the systems we have, right? And I think that is coalition building. And it's deeper than just like one vote. What it allows people to do is see themselves in a bigger conversation than just themselves as an individual. It's why I'm running at large, right? Because I look at our city as a full city. I look at all of our issues and I wonder, how do the things that happen on the east side impact people in South Kansas City, impact people in the Northland? How is it that things that are happening in the Northland impact people on the east side, impact people on the west side, right? So when I'm building coalition, it's not for one individual issue. It's what is at stake in our city and how do we make things better for everyone who lives here?
What's the biggest changes that you've seen over the last decade in the Northland, the second district?
Yeah, the biggest thing change I've seen is honestly demographically, we have become poorer in an older neighborhood, we've also become a more diverse community, right? So the area of the Northland I live in is the southern Clay County portion. I live near Worlds of Fun, if that is a good marker for you. And these neighborhoods are old. They're really old. A lot of them don't have sidewalks. A lot of them don't have access to public transportation. A lot of the houses, if not kept up, will fall apart because they're not built with brick. They were built right after World War II and just kind of put together, right? But what I see in my neighborhood is a lot of the houses that used to be single family home owners, those folks are getting older. And as they are moving out of the community, these houses are becoming rental properties, right? I am a tenant in our city. But as my neighborhood continues to become rental properties, people are moving out, less people know one another, and we see the neighborhood starting to fall apart, right? We see a lot of the things that made these neighborhoods really strong in the beginning start falling apart because we don't have decision-making power in our city. So what I'm seeing is, yes, our older neighborhoods needing support. Yes, we are seeing a lot of poor working class people coming here. I also see a lot of diversity, right? Part of redistricting, what we saw was the fact that there were a lot more Black and Brown community members who were moving into these neighborhoods over here. And we can attribute that to a lot of things. One of the main things that I think we should be talking about is why, right? When gentrification is pushing on the east side, when people are getting pushed out of the east side, where are they going to go? Sometimes they go to Raytown, sometimes they go to Grandview, but a lot of times they come to this area of the Northland. And if we are not actively building power alongside the people who live in these communities, what we will see is huge disinvestment in these neighborhoods, and people who were pushed out of their community continue to struggle in mine. And what I want to see us do is start building alongside the people who live in my neighborhood, who live across the city, who are struggling to get by, and ask them, what do we need and how do we create change in our city? So I see what is happening is a lot of people are coming to Kansas City, but it is changing the makeup of the neighborhoods we live in. And we can be really excited about that, as long as we are actively asking them what they need and how we can support to make sure that everybody in Kansas City lives in a place where we all thrive.
How do you feel about this talk of downtown stadium?
I feel like our our elected officials should prioritize the needs of the people in our communities, right? We can have economic development and not push people out. And I think if people like John Sherman really want to create a downtown stadium, he's a billionaire. And he should be able to do that on his own. But our public tax dollars should go into the communities that need it the most to stabilize the people who will be impacted by a downtown stadium. I think we should prioritize that. The other thing I would say about the stadium is right now they're talking about the East Village. They're also talking about a North Kansas City stadium. What I don't hear is them actually engaging the people in a very authentic conversation about what they want to do. So we are rapid responding and reacting to hypotheticals instead of having a very nuanced conversation about what a stadium would mean for either of those communities.
Well, I feel we live in the matrix. I don't know whether I talked to you about that. And so the matrix is the people that got the money. But I think I did talk to you about ever since the seventh. No, I didn't. But ever since the 7th century, Europeans have controlled 100% of all forms of communications, and so whatever they want you to put your attention on, that's what your attention is going to be on, because that's all you're going to see in major media, because people with the money control the media. And uh, I think that's why we have our show, to give you a voice in your own voice, unaltered and unedited, so that your community can make the decision on which way is up according to the information that they're receiving.
Yeah, thank you for that. In organizing, we say that our stories are power and they shouldn't be repackaged for anybody else, right? When I think about what it means to organize and what it means to disrupt what is currently the status quo, to me, it looks like coming together with people and making our voices loud and unapologetic about the things that we need, right? So when you're talking about media, what does it look like for the people in our communities to organize one another and continue to amplify the stories of the people who are most impacted in our city, right? And that has to be central to how everything happens in our city, or our voices will be drowned out. right? There's a narrative that people want to put out in the world, but we can actually prioritize our voices and how we want them presented in our city.
All right. On closing, what would you have to say to our community and overall, and specifically to your constituents?
My name is Jenay Manley, and I'm running for the Kansas City City Council in the 2nd District at large. I'm running to be the first Black person to represent the Northland on the Kansas City City Council. I am also running to ensure that poor and working class people across our city can build for a city that actually works for us. I prioritize people over profit. What that means is I do not take any money from developers, from private utility companies, or anyone else who would ask me to compromise my values of putting people first solutions out there into the world. I believe that we can create a better Kansas City, but it starts by talking to the people who are in our neighborhoods. It starts by building alongside people and asking people what they need. When we start looking to people for solutions instead of building solutions for headlines, we can really make this city work for us. And that is the way that a single mom like me will make sure that her babies stay safe, not just while they are in my house, but in the future. We can continue to create a Kansas City where it works for all of us. I believe that. But I believe it starts by organizing and asking people what they need and how we can create those types of solutions. That's what I'm going to do on city council. That's what makes me different for city council. And that's why I'm running. So I want to say thank y'all for listening. I appreciate you so much.
All right.
Oh, vote for me. Vote for me June 20th.
All right. I think that was excellent closing on your part. But as we always say in our closing, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Good night.
The program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.